Hello, hello, hello. Did I see Machine Gun Kelly's submission for the most awkward grid walk interview of all time? I did. And yeah, Machine Gun Kelly, he might just be the awkwardest person of all time. he strikes me as a strange man, does Machine Gun Kelly, but we're beyond that now. Luckily, we're nearly done with the grid walk, and we can forget that has ever happened. Hello, Jamie. How are you? Quecky as well. How are we all doing? Are we looking forward to the Brazilian Grand Prix? It feels a little strange, I suppose. Like, I don't know. The sprint races here before have felt quite good. They've kind of added to the weekend. I feel like the sprint race yesterday kind of took away from the race a little bit for me. I'm hoping that it won't. I'm hoping that we'll still have a good Grand Prix. But it does just feel like maybe we learned a little bit too much in the sprint race. And I think the problem was that the cars struggled in the sprint race. When you have a sprint race and the cars still look like they've got more to give, it's like, oh, okay, in the race, this could get really good. Unfortunately, in the sprint race yesterday, kind of felt like after 10, 12 laps, everybody had put in as much as they possibly could and nobody could really do anything else. Whereas I'm hoping today, a little bit of a format change, a little bit of pit stops in there to mix up the grid a touch. Maybe we'll see more battles towards the front. Because don't get me wrong, you know, the Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo, sort of Oscar Piastri, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, all of that was very, very entertaining. So maybe we'll just be watching that kind of back of the grid battle play out again today. Of course, we can have a little look at the starting grid. Verstappen on pole. After yesterday's performance as well, just feels like Verstappen's too quick to really have any kind of pressure on him at this moment in time. Charles Leclerc in second place. An astonishing performance in qualifying, in my opinion, from Charles Leclerc. And did pretty well in the race yesterday. The Ferrari overheating a touch from what Fred Vasseur has been saying. And the car's struggling again with tyre degradation. Although everyone seems to be struggling with tyre degradation. Getting very slippery towards the end of the sprint race for the majority of drivers out there. Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso are an interesting pair to look out for. They did look quick yesterday in the sprint, but obviously yesterday in the sprint they were a lot further back. So will they actually be able to compete with the likes of Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris just behind them? We'll have to kind of wait and see. Especially Lance Stroll, I feel like, is under quite a bit of pressure there with Fernando Alonso up the inside towards turn one. It's going to be tricky for Lance Stroll, but a real opportunity for him to kind of revive a little bit of his season after a lot of criticism from myself included since the summer break for Stroll. But third place here, a podium for an Aston Martin of any kind, whether it is Stroll or Alonso, would just look absolutely brilliant for them. Because they, need a little bit of a revival. When was the last time we saw them on the podium? Zandvoort with Fernando Alonso. And even then, that felt a little bit lucky is maybe the wrong word to use, but a little bit unjust that they were on the podium at Zandvoort. Haven't really had the pace of those top teams. Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris just behind, as I said. Lando Norris saying yesterday he had good pace, but just quite... Oh, thank you, Nolan, for the subscription. But yeah, Lando Norris saying he just didn't quite have the pace to actually live with Max Verstappen, especially towards the end of the race. He sort of was keeping within a couple of seconds of Verstappen, and then that fell off a cliff once the McLaren tyres had fully been spent. Hopefully a few different strategies, maybe a safety car near the end, add some drama. Safety car's definitely on. We normally do see a safety car or so in Brazil, just because a lot of the time... Oh, it's Gasly's car being worked on the grid by the Alpine mechanics. That doesn't look good for the Frenchman. Sure, he will be on the grid and okay by the time we get there. Pierre Gasly, is that him standing at the back of the car? No, it's not that. It's an engineer. Just a man with a beard at the back of the car. Thought it was Pierre Gasly, but no. When are you going to release that video about Villeneuve? Which video about Villeneuve? What do you think? Which one are you referring to? Unfortunately, Haas are going to fall so quickly. I don't feel confident at all. I don't know. Today's a bit different because they could go for a little bit of a cheeky strategy change. They might go for like a 2 or 3 stop strategy. And therefore, they might be able to hold on to their tyres and keep them alive just a little bit longer. Because the problem Haas had yesterday was the tyres obviously keeping them in that window. It's a little bit tricky for them. And therefore, they just couldn't really battle with those midfield cars. Hulkenberg himself saying, like, we qualified well, we thought we had good pace, but when it came to the race pace, just wasn't quite there in the sprint. But today, if they can, go for a weird strategy, as I said, maybe a 3-stop, the Haas's might look a little bit more competitive. They might be, in and around 11th, 12th. Again, breaking into that top 10 is so hard at this point in the season. Any surprises expected from the bottom half of the grid? AlphaTauris, obviously, yeah. Don't think the AlphaTauris will do very well over 71 laps. I don't know. Daniel Ricciardo still had quite a bit of pace towards the end of the sprint yesterday, in comparison to the rest of the field anyway. I think... but then Yuki Tsunoda's just ahead of it. The Alpines as well are going to be tricky for Ricciardo. The problem with Ricciardo today, as opposed to yesterday, is yesterday he was straight into it. Like, he was already in those battles straight away. He could get up alongside Piastri, start knocking on the door, putting Carlos Sainz under pressure. Obviously got past Carlos Sainz a couple of times as well. But starting from 17th is a whole different ballgame. It's almost the inverse of what we saw with the Aston Martins yesterday. Now, the Aston Martins managed to push up, get towards the top 10, but not quite get in, or towards the top 8, sorry, in the sprint, but not quite get into the points for Aston Martin yesterday. I feel like Daniel Ricciardo is going to be doing a similar thing. Starting from 17th place, working his way through, cutting through the Alpines, trying to swiftly dispatch Alex Albon, trying to move past the Hasses as quickly as he can. But whether over the course of 71 laps he's going to have enough to break into that top 10, yet to be seen. Yet to be seen. Because as I say, if you look at that top 10, it's pretty stacked. Like, who's dropping out of that top 10 would be my question in the other way around. Like, it's all well and good saying, okay, Daniel Ricciardo could get into the points, or Alex Albon could get into the points from where they are. Even the Alpines, like, if you were going to say, those back-end drivers, which of them are going to get in the points, the Alpines have been there fairly consistently since the summer break. But in that top 10 right now, it's a stacked top 10. It's not like we've got anyone super out of the video you talked about in qualifying about Jacques Villeneuve. Oh, I see what you mean with the driver pairings, but they have to be related to one another. That will probably be post-season. It'll probably be a sort of December, January, February video. Probably a December video, because at the moment, videos coming thick and fast, and I have to kind of stay on top of what's happening in the now of Formula One. As much as I love making videos about the rest. Need to fix sprints to similar to the race? Yeah, the sprints, unfortunately... Well, if anything, they need to fix the sprints to be unsimilar to the race. Like, they need to fix the sprint so it is its own thing. So it feels like its own entity. Because at the minute, it does just feel like a mini Grand Prix. Like, the drivers are starting from pretty much where they were. Obviously, apart from the fact that Fernando Alonso was out of position because he collided with Esteban Ocon, and the fact that Lance Stroll had a really good day on Friday and a poor day on Saturday, apart from that, it looks fairly similar, doesn't it? Like, the drivers are maybe plus or minus 2, 3, 4 positions from where they're going to be. And over the first few laps, that's probably going to shake itself out. So the qualifying in the sprint doesn't actually change up the order in any way. And therefore, it means that the sprint just ends up being a sort of smaller version of the race, which we don't want. We want it to be different. Again, I don't know the 100% what the best idea is to fix the sprint. I might do a tier list, actually. I was thinking of this, where I get you guys to submit ideas for fixing the sprint race, and then I kind of go through them, give your opinions and my opinions on how the sprint races could be fixed, and kind of tier them on how well I think they would fix the sprint race / how likely it would be to happen. It's another video. I love that I just spend this sort of time telling you the ideas that I have, running through them. Over 21,000 subs. Nice. Thank you, Anne. Yeah, 21K. absolutely crazy recently. Don't know how it happened. Like, the goal by the end of the season was sort of optimistic 20, maybe unoptimistic 15. Like, that at the beginning of the season, like in Bahrain, that was what I kind of had in mind. Like, if I could go to 20, that would be a ridiculous year. If I could get to 15, that would be about where I'd expect to be. But actually, just recently taken a little bit of a stride forward. The video's been doing a little bit better than normal. Kind of, I normally aim for about 1,000 views. Most of them got over 2,000, so it's kind of a lot going on the channel at the moment. Just trying to keep up that kind of nature. Although this triple header has been a lot. I feel like we're getting towards the end of the final triple header, and it's definitely been quite a bit of work to do all three of these races back to back to back. So I definitely don't envy the guys out on the track right now that have had to go all the way through this whole stint, Austin, Mexico, Brazil, and have only had maybe a day or so to really get the turnaround done. But we are getting down to... Ooh. There'll be a bit of a replay of the Max Verstappen Esteban Ocon incident. Unlikely to happen. Well, actually, will Max be overtaking will Max be overtaking Esteban Ocon when he's trying to unlap himself? Maybe. But here we go then. Getting set. Everyone looks pretty much ready to go. See, a lot of the drivers starting on the soft compound tyre, although a used set. Ferrari deciding to keep a set. Lance Stroll also has a set of fresh soft compound tyres to use as well. Hulkenberg and Magnussen have a fresh set of softs. Ricciardo, Bottas and Joe. Then Logan Sargent, again, starting on the medium compound tyre. We saw him on the medium compound tyre yesterday in the sprint, and he wasn't very happy after the sprint, was Logan Sargent. Came home in 20th place, and he said he just felt a little bit out of the loop and wasn't really able to take strides forwards like he wanted to. But Logan Sargent, again, on the medium compound tyre to start with. Maybe looking at a 3-stop of some kind. Don't know. It's difficult to know with Logan Sargent what Williams are kind of opting to do with him, isn't it? Because he's so far down a lot of the time after qualifying that they generally go for a bit of a weird strategy with him. They kind of gamble a little bit with Logan Sargent. Like, he'll probably go long and hope for a safety car or something, I'd imagine. That might be where Logan Sargent's kind of sitting. Go long on that first stint, hope for a safety car at some point, just after the soft compound tyre drivers have pitted. Agree that sprints feel stale. Yeah, they're created as a gimmick. So go all out. Yeah, that's true. Might as well just throw everything at it. See what sticks. Like, I like the fact that they changed it up for this season. They at least tried something different, you know. Like, we could have just had 6 sprints in the same vein that we had the season before, but they clearly know there's something that needs to be fixed, and they're changing up little bits and pieces as they can. It felt like a little bit of a late call, though, to do it in Baku. They were like, right, we're going into the first sprint of the season. Sprint qualifying and a sprint race. I felt like they didn't have much of an idea, and then they just kind of last minute threw it out there. Cars out on track, though. See the tyre blankets coming away from them. Cars jacked onto the ground. Max Verstappen, of course, starting from pole position. Charles Leclerc, Lance Stroll just behind. You can see that actually Charles Leclerc, with a good launch, as we saw from Max Verstappen yesterday, you do have the inside line going down towards turn 1. And you can see Charles Leclerc's tyres a lot shinier than Max Verstappen's at this point. The fresh set of soft compound tyres for Charles Leclerc might just give him that advantage. And we could see Charles Leclerc leading this Grand Prix down towards turn 1. Whether or not he'll be able to hold on to that for the entire Grand Prix, yet to be seen. I'm slightly doubtful that we'll see Charles Leclerc hold on to the Grand Prix lead the whole time. But if he can get into the lead, might be able to just slow Max Verstappen down enough that he doesn't disappear off into the distance, and possibly someone else can also join that fight. Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso getting underway, just coming around to turn 4. Good overtaking opportunity for them there. Hello, Jake, mate. Hamilton also down towards turn 4. Will be thinking about overtaking those Aston Martins off the line, getting himself up towards the podium positions that he's become fairly frequent in getting since the summer break whenever he doesn't not finish the race or get DNF'd. Or get disqualified. Oh! Charles Leclerc! Charles Leclerc's gone off in the formation lap. Oh, no. Just as I was saying, Charles Leclerc, starting on the soft compound tyre, had an opportunity to get up alongside Max Verstappen into turn 1. He's thrown it away. They're probably going to have to delay the start of the Grand Prix now to recover the Ferrari. Oh, no. He's got away, but is there damage? There's a lot of damage to the front wing of the Ferrari. Is Charles Leclerc going to be able to get all the way back around? He's going to have to come into the pits. A new front wing from Charles Leclerc. Oh, the hydraulics went. The hydraulics went. Oh, dear. And it's another. It's a big impact as well from Charles Leclerc. He's really lost the Ferrari car. Oof. Oh, you can see. Big puff of smoke from the rear end of the Ferrari, and once that smoke happens, the car just seems to disappear from underneath him. Wow. Well, that is it then for Charles Leclerc. He's going to be out of the Grand Prix. He managed to at least move his car enough to then get it off of the racetrack, and I don't think we'll have a delayed start. I think we will go for 71 full laps of the Grand Prix. But Charles Leclerc, that is very, very awkward indeed from him. Let's see them. We are underway. 5 red lights. We'll get the details from Charles Leclerc when they come in. But here we are then. Max Verstappen away all by himself on the front row of the grid. Instantly, the Aston Martin's under pressure. Lando Norris. Oh, and there's a big crash. I think that's Alex Albon. And one of the Hasses. There's Kevin Magnussen into the wall. And there's tyres all over the place. I think that's probably ending up going to be a safety car. Lando Norris with an absolutely electric start right up the inside of both of the Aston Martins. And Lewis Hamilton round the outside. Safety car it is, though. Lance Stroll, Sergio Perez battling in there as well. George Russell in 6th place at this moment in time, although maybe Sergio Perez just got ahead before the safety car came down. Be interesting to see who decides to come out on top between Sergio Perez and George Russell. Russell taking the initiative and staying in 6th place. That was a big impact at the beginning of the Grand Prix. It was indeed Alex Albon and Kevin Magnussen who came together. So Kevin Magnussen starting just in front of Alex Albon. And Alex Albon must have run into the back of the Dane. Safety car is going to go through the pit lane because it is right at the end of that start-finish straight that the Haas and the Williams have come to a stop. Both drivers are fine. Both drivers just moving off the racetrack right now and heading into the medical car. Let's have a little look then. Max Verstappen with a very solid start. Gets away from the pack. Both of the Aston Martins struggle. Just opens the door for Lando Norris and Hamilton. They're already past before they get to the corner. And then it is, it's Alex Albon hitting into the back of Kevin Magnussen. Why not red flag instead of under the safety car? I assume because they want to have a little look at the barriers to see whether or not they can put it back together again. But yeah, it does look like the barriers have taken a hefty shunt, particularly from the Williams. Alex Albon's on board then, gets a good launch. Kevin Magnussen in front of him, actually peels over and is ahead. Oh, no, sorry. He actually hits both Hasses, does Alex Albon. I think it's Nico Hülkenberg in the middle. It is indeed. So Nico Hülkenberg is actually the first Haas to collide with Alex Albon. Albon peels off to the right-hand side, moves up towards the first corner. I think tries to cover across, and the rear left tyre is clipped on Alex Albon's Williams. That sends him spinning, and then he spins into the other Haas of Kevin Magnussen. So actually, it was Nico Hülkenberg came into a connection with the Williams first, and then the Williams spirals into the Haas of Kevin Magnussen. Oscar Piastri also was there. I think Oscar Piastri gets clipped by the Haas as well. That might be damage to Oscar Piastri's car and why he's had to come into the pits. And there is the red flag that we were expecting. Nico Hülkenberg also coming into the pits. A big amount of damage to his car. And there we are then. The red flag falls. And we have Max Verstappen leading from Lando Norris as it was in the sprint. Lewis Hamilton in third place. And looking competitive after that start from the Mercedes. Alonso, Stroll and Russell just behind. So Alonso able to get the jump on his teammate, but losing out to Norris and Hamilton. And that's Oscar Piastri out of the Grand Prix by the looks of things. The rear wing of the McLaren took a big shunt from Kevin Magnussen. And yeah, not safe to continue. So that is Oscar Piastri also straight out of this Grand Prix. So we lost Charles Leclerc on the formation lap. We've lost Alex Albon and Kevin Magnussen straight away. And we've also lost Oscar Piastri. Oh, and Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo is also in the pits. And Ricciardo's going to be out as well. So within the space of the first 2 laps, we've lost 5 cars from this Grand Prix. Piastri and Ricciardo both out of the Grand Prix, managed to get themselves back around to the pit lane, but both are going to be out of this one. Stayed up till 4 a.m. to see both Aussies get damage and likely retire. Yeah, unfortunately, if you're an Aussie fan, it's bad news for both, unfortunately. Oscar Piastri colliding with with Kevin Magnussen after Magnussen was swiped by Alex Albon. Ooh, maybe not. Maybe not. McLaren rolling the dice. They're going to see if they can repair the car. The red flag giving them an opportunity to get back in and try again. Verstappen comfortably at the front of the grid, though. Stares off into the distance. And the comfortable turn 1 for him after Charles Leclerc wasn't able to continue on. There is Daniel Ricciardo out of the car. And again, it's the rear end of the AlphaTauri that the crew are working on. Will Daniel Ricciardo be able to get back into the race? We'll have to wait and see. So it's Piastri and Ricciardo that are 50-50 at the moment as to whether they'll continue. Magnussen, Leclerc and Albon definitely out of the race. And there is Charles Leclerc with his Ferrari. Frustratingly lost hydraulics at the beginning on the formation lap. They are allowed to repair the cars under red flag conditions as long as it doesn't breach any of the other regulations. So they can't do too much if a part is completely unsalvageable. A lot of the time they can't really repair that. But we saw a similar thing with Sergio Perez in Japan. You might remember where he stayed in the pits for quite a while in Japan. And then they sent him back out again to serve that 5-second penalty. So you are allowed to repair bits and pieces of the car. But you're not allowed to effectively rebuild the entire thing from the ground up. Sort of various bits and pieces that you can and cannot put back together. There is the Williams of Alex Albon being lifted and moved off of the racing line. And also sweeping the track. There was a lot of carbon fiber on the track after that race start. But still no confirmation as to how long this will be. We've got 2 cars on the track. We've got debris that needs to be swept. And also we've got a tyre barrier that needs to be put back together again. So could be a considerable wait in this one. And Lando Norris just confirming that for me. Currently, we don't have any message on when the restart will be happening. But as always in Brazil, some drama to get us started. I left for 1 minute and there's already a red flag. Yeah, I feel like that's the case for a lot of people, to be honest. That's why you can't miss the race start. Why you cannot miss the race start. The drama. Yeah, it was unlucky. I don't know. I'd have to see it again. It does feel like Alex Albon is slightly to blame for me. Just a touch. Because Alex Albon, effectively, right, he's got the 2 Hasses in front of him. He's got Nico Hülkenberg directly in front of him. He's got Kevin Magnussen off to her side. Gets a really good start, does Alex Albon. You've got to hand it to him in the Williams. Gets a really, really quick start off the line. Peels off to the right-hand side of the Haas. So then what's happened is Nico Hülkenberg, who is in front of Alex Albon, got quite a poor start. Kevin Magnussen gets up in front of Hülkenberg, and Alex Albon also gets up in front of Hülkenberg. The problem is, Kevin Magnussen is here, Alex Albon is here, Nico Hülkenberg is in the middle, but slightly behind. And as Alex Albon drifts towards the first corner, as he comes across and starts to go towards the first corner, Hülkenberg, as we've seen a lot recently, when 3 cars are side by side, the middle car has nowhere to go. So I feel like Hülkenberg actually kind of drops out of it, tries to brake, and then Albon straight, and I think Hulk tried to back out, just did it a bit too late. Yeah, that's what I think. It's just sort of Albon peels across a little bit. Hülkenberg does brake. You can see the Haas drop backwards, but Kevin Magnussen is here, so he can't go any further left. And then Albon just clips Albon's rear left tyre, clips the front right tyre of Hülkenberg. And then as soon as that happens, because it's Albon's rear tyre, the rear end loses. He then comes across the front of Hülkenberg. And Kevin Magnussen is here, unfortunately. And Kevin Magnussen is sort of not T-boned to an extent, but caught by Alex Albon. And the rear end of the Haas then disappears from underneath Kevin Magnussen as well. So I'm impressed that Nico Hülkenberg is continuing, if I'm honest. Oscar Piastri did get clipped. Well, I say clipped. Got quite a shunt from Kevin Magnussen as Magnussen was spinning out of control. But Nico Hülkenberg was right at the center of that and managing to continue, it looks like, in the Haas car in 15th place. Biggest winner is Logan Sargent. Jumped from 20th at the start of the grid. Would have been 19th, obviously, because Charles Leclerc not starting, but up to 14th now, Logan Sargent, out of nowhere. Yuki Tsunoda also up into the points. So, as I said, it was going to be tough to break into the top 10, because it looked like a pretty solid top 10. But Charles Leclerc now out of it. Oscar Piastri now out of it. There's a couple of spaces that are wide open for some point-scoring positions. And Esteban Ocon and Yuki Tsunoda are currently sitting in them. The AlphaTauri, in the last couple of races, really has come to life, hasn't it? We don't know whether the AlphaTauri did have this much pace, maybe since the summer break. Not saying that Liam Lawson wasn't good. I think Liam Lawson was very, very quick when he was in that AlphaTauri car. But we didn't get to see Yuki Tsunoda at Monza or at Singapore. So we don't really know whether this AlphaTauri pace maybe was there a little while earlier for those higher speed tracks. What a start from the Brits. Where are we looking at? Hamilton up to 3rd, Russell up to 6th, Lando Norris up to 2nd. Not bad at all. Take that. 3 point scoring positions for the British drivers on the grid. Not the one for the Aussies at this point. The Aussies are the real losers. Oscar Piastri dropping out of the points and down to 16th place. Daniel Ricciardo effectively where he started. Started 17th, still 17th, but should have made up some positions there. Daniel Ricciardo looking very quick indeed. Esteban Ocon was looking at this then. So Esteban Ocon actually gets almost. He decided to go behind Alex Albon and then sort of thought differently of it and decided to go behind Kevin Magnussen instead. This is what happened to Daniel Ricciardo then. So he's a little bit further back. You can still see what happens in front with the Hasses. And I think it's maybe debris that hits Daniel Ricciardo's car. Oh, it's the wheel. It's the rubber of a wheel that hits onto Daniel Ricciardo's car. So Daniel Ricciardo sort of weaves out of the way of all of the debris and chaos that was in front of him with Alex Albon and Kevin Magnussen. But I think it's the wheel of the Haas, maybe? Just the rubber part of the wheel. So not the solid metal part in the center, but the rubber of the wheel came loose and bobbled up. And I think actually did hit the rear wing of Daniel Ricciardo. Seeing some of the starts, though, from the perspective of the drivers towards the front of the grid, Lando Norris absolutely flew. Yeah, Lando rocketed, as Antonio has put perfectly, just ahead of the Aston Martins before they even knew it. And actually, the move done on the Aston Martin cars before they even really got going, Lance Stroll, the biggest loser in all of that, kind of gets a little... Again, the problem is, like, if you start on the odd-numbered side, so if you're starting first, third, fifth, seventh, you're on the outside of the first corner. So Fernando Alonso just stays alongside Lance Stroll and all the way down to turn one, then has the position. And because Lewis Hamilton is then in front of Lance Stroll has to brake because Hamilton has broken, and Fernando Alonso can just take that opportunity to get in front of his teammate. So Lance Stroll, a little bit unlucky to be the third place driver in all of that. But Lewis Hamilton round the outside of both of the Aston Martins, and Lando Norris snuck up the inside, almost went 4 abreast into the first corner, although Hamilton and Lando fairly comfortably ahead by the start. Shake of the head by Fernando Alonso, I think just frustrated to lose out to not one but 2 drivers from behind him. And Charles Leclerc is back to the garage for the Ferrari team. I imagine will not spend very long in the garage. In fact, just delivers his helmet, takes his helmet off, and heads back away from the cameras there. Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton having a little watch, I imagine, of the start. If he can do that once again, he'll be in the lead of the Grand Prix. If he can jump the couple of cars that will be in front of him. But again, now Lewis Hamilton is starting in 3rd place. I feel like it's slightly trickier. Daddy's boy can't get off the line. I don't know if it was even that he didn't get off the line. Like, both of the Aston Martins started poorly. The only reason that he lost out to Alonso is because Alonso was up the inside, effectively. But George Russell also sticking in 6th place will see that from the Aston Martins and think, well, if Lewis Hamilton could have got around the outside of both of them, why not? Actually, George Russell's going to be up the inside of both of the Aston Martin cars. So even better, you would say, for George Russell. He's going to be right there. Sergio Perez might be able to go around the outside. Carlos Sainz will be thinking at the bottom of this pack of 8 that he needs to stay in that 8. He's the sole scoring Ferrari on their way to try and catch Mercedes in the constructor standings. It's not going to help them a lot at all. And then, as I said, Ocon and Tsunoda up into the points. Bottas and Zhou in 12th and 13th place actually could be looking at an interesting overtaking maneuver. Piastri's damage is fixable. Come on, lads. They're trying their best. Trying their best. I really hope so too. I'd like to see both Piastri and Ricciardo back in because they were 2 of the drivers that I was more excited about seeing, to be honest, because Piastri's going for a little bit of a tough weekend, but I was hoping would come alive in the race, especially starting in the top 10. And then Daniel Ricciardo had a poor qualifying on Friday, but then showed that the pace the AlphaTauri had on the Saturday. And I was like, maybe he can do something a little bit special here, Daniel Ricciardo. I know he's starting towards the back, but still would be very impressive for the Australian to move forwards. Where is that tyre from? Yeah, Ocon misses the tyre, but I think Daniel Ricciardo comes into contact with it. I just don't know where that tyre came from. Ah, here we go then. Seeing it from Daniel Ricciardo? Nope, okay. I want to see it from Daniel Ricciardo's perspective, but Brady Karun Chandok. Hulkenberg on that point tower, and if you're watching the replay, yeah, I don't know if Hulkenberg can do much, to be honest. He's just being squeezed. I mean, he could have ducked out of it like 10 meters earlier, but he's a racing driver. He wants to kind of stick in there. Haas causing safety car and red flags. More iconic duo. It's Kevin Magnussen again as well. Although I feel like Nico Hulkenberg is more to blame for this one. Although, you know, Kevin Magnussen wasn't to blame last weekend either. He can't do anything about the fact that his rear left tyre just collapsed in on itself. There is Oscar Piastri. Is he looking at getting back in that car anytime soon? Don't know, because we cut to George Russell having a little wander down the pit lane and sneezing. Oh. Maybe George has got the flu. Why waste 2 laps under the safety car? Yeah, in the end, I get what you mean. Oh, the Haas actually contacts it. Yeah, it is the contact between the tyre and the rear wing of the AlphaTauri. It does actually get flicked up by Nico Hulkenberg, like the tyre debris that came off the collision. Right, I'm looking at the back, I still can't tell whose tyre that is because it comes off when they go under the bridge. I suppose it doesn't matter whose tyre it was that came loose, but let's go Hamilton on P3. Smashing it. Norris now where he should have qualified. Exactly. And that is why he's going to win the race. Now, I think the problem was the difference between here and Mexico and Qatar in terms of like Lando Norris's poor qualifyings that he's had over the last kind of 4 races or so. The difference here is Max Verstappen is on pole, whereas in Mexico he wasn't on pole, in Qatar he wasn't on pole. So like you could feasibly like see a world where if Lando Norris was at the front of the grid and Max Verstappen was, you know, 2-3 positions behind, then he's able to kind of get enough of a lead to maybe make it interesting. Just feel like when Verstappen is there and he's going to be on you straight away. It's going to be there. They always say Brazil never disappoint. I say that all the time. Although I say the opposite. I say Brazil always delivers. And it has delivered. Well, it's delivered a start. I don't know if this is like a full delivery. We haven't seen any good racing yet. we haven't seen, you know, if you just love crashes, if you're in Formula One for the crashes, this has been perfect. Absolutely textbook crash. If you're in Formula One for the racing, we haven't really seen any yet. Seen a couple of good overtakes from Norris and Hamilton. Some good wheel-to-wheel action down towards turn 4, just as the safety car came out. Sort of had Russell and Perez side by side with one another. But apart from that, I haven't really seen any racing as such. Oh, there's a lot of debris that is showered over Pierre Gasly's car. Surprised he didn't take any form of damage at all. Maybe a little bit of damage somewhere there for Pierre Gasly, I would imagine. Daniel Ricciardo back in the car at AlphaTauri. So possibly have been able to put that car together again up to a working condition. Do I play the Formula One game or your PC or ever thought of playing with the Logitech setup? I do have a setup, but I never really stream it. I don't know why. It's just like, it's one of those things that I do to kind of relax more than anything else. Maybe I'll start streaming. I mean, I could show you. Hang on. Let me show you. Let me get the camera. Oh, it's down there. It's got some documents on it at the moment. Down there, got a little streaming set up, but yeah, I don't really stream. Well, I've got a racing sim, I should say, but I don't really stream from it very often. Maybe in the off season, maybe. Just feels like a lot of the season gets very hectic at this point, especially with the triple header that we've got, and there's a double header as well for Vegas and Abu Dhabi, and Vegas is going to be an absolute like catastrophe. Like, I'm already seeing Vegas and just being like, this is going to be abysmal. Like, just feels like the whole Las Vegas weekend. The racing might be all right if we actually get to see any of it, because the whole surrounding nature of the Las Vegas Grand Prix is just falling apart at this point. I don't know if you've seen, but people are trying to get rid of their tickets. So tickets that people have paid like upwards of like thousands of pounds for. I think there was a ticket that initially was worth like £10,000 or so, has now been sold for like 4,000. Like, that is when you're selling off a ticket for half of what you paid for it, it's not a good sign, is it? And there's been a similar sort of thing. There's a lot of controversy around the Las Vegas Grand Prix already, and we haven't even got there yet. So 5 minutes until the restart is indeed, yeah, we will resume at 14:31 local time. So thank you, Alex, for saying, yeah, 5 minutes until we get going again. Alex Albon, though, not going to be getting underway once again. Comes into the garage and I think just has a little chat with the engineers, apologizes possibly, but not... It was all a bit of a racing incident. There was kind of nobody super at fault, but at the same time, tricky. Love to see you stream and play the F1 game. If you do, then I have to challenge play with 100% haptic feedback. I don't play with any kind of like... I play on literal like baby settings. Just like baby settings. Ricardo back in the car. He is indeed back in the car. Haven't heard confirmation of the restart. Standing start confirmed by Sergio Perez on the radio there. Well, Sergio Perez's engineer. So Oscar Piastri also back in the car. Looks like both Aussies will continue. They will start from the pit lane, of course. But they will actually be in the race. And you never know. There might be another restart and they might get another opportunity to jump a few positions. Anyone going to swap the softs? Not that I've seen so far. Not that I've seen so far. I suppose kind of levels the playing field a touch because everyone who was on fresh softs now no longer. Actually, everyone who was on fresh softs had a terrible start. Leclerc was on fresh softs, was out before we even got there. Magnussen was on fresh softs, now out. Hulkenberg was on fresh softs, lost the positions because he was part of the collision with his teammate in Albon. Everyone who was on fresh soft. Daniel Ricciardo was on fresh softs, wasn't he? Or was it Tsunoda? No, it was Ricciardo. Ricciardo was on fresh softs. He's down. It started from the pit lane. Basically, if you started on scrubbed softs, you were fine. You started on fresh softs. Absolutely not. They could go to the hards till the end. Ooh, I think that would be very, very risky. I feel like it's still going to be a two-stop race, right? We only saw an actual, well, in terms of actual racing, we only saw 4 corners. So I feel like those tyres are still fresh enough that the majority will be there. 11 p.m. in India, have school tomorrow. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. Don't miss the race. Just be tired at school. No, definitely take your education first. Let's make sure that you pass those exams before we watch the Brazilian Grand Prix. I feel like that's advice that I should have been given during my exams. Here we are then, Daniel Ricciardo confirmed in the car. Radio? Nothing, okay. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo in and ready to go. 1.4 already, yeah. I mean, that's because Max Verstappen had to do nothing. Like, Max Verstappen just disappeared up into the lead, whereas Lando Norris had to kind of battle up the inside of Fernando Alonso and then was obviously very tight to the first corner, so didn't really have too much speed through the second corner, Lando Norris. That's where you lose out. If you go for the overtake, especially on the inside of turn 1, you do lose out a little bit on turn 2. Brazilian Grand Prix, more important than mock exams. Mock exams, fine. They don't mean anything. Is anyone taking a mock exam seriously? You know. We are getting underway then, just showing you Max Verstappen leading the cars away from the pit lane. The formation lap once again, and then we will have a standing start. Oscar Piastri and Daniel Ricciardo starting from the pit lane. So 17 cars still involved. 15 will be taking part in the standing start, and hopefully we can get away without a collision this time around. The teachers usually do. As an ex-teacher, I can't say anything because I'll be liable, but ooh, Lando Norris looks like has taken a fresh set of softs by the looks of things. Cool. Got an itchy nose today. Do just find myself with an itchy nose every now and then for no reason. Hamilton and Alonso, second row of the grid. Ooh, look at that. Lance Stroll and George Russell just behind. Russell will be thinking, my teammate got the jump on the Aston Martins. I'm going to have a little go too, especially as he's starting just beside Lance Stroll. Sergio Perez there in 7th place and 8th place Carlos Sainz, kind of rounding out those top 4 teams that we've got at the moment. Piastri dropping all the way down because of that collision. He is a lap down, and Daniel Ricciardo a lap down as well. Charles Leclerc out of the race altogether from those teams. Ocon and Tsunoda, 9th and 10th, just rounding out the point scoring positions at this moment in time. Points needed for Ocon to close that gap to his teammate in the standings. Tsunoda desperate to assert his dominance in the AlphaTauri team. Big opportunity now. Gasly in 11th place, though, will be looking at moving upwards. Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu also in 12th and 13th. Logan Sargent, a big winner from the red flag scenario, jumps up to 14th. Hülkenberg 15th, Piastri 16th, and Daniel Ricciardo 17th. But as I said, those two will start from the pit lane. The two Australians making their way down the pit lane as well. 5 red lights it is. Come on, Lando. Up the inside, down towards turn 1. Got that opportunity. Lando Norris with a poor start, and it's going to be under pressure from Lewis Hamilton instead of battling with Verstappen. Big lock up from Lewis Hamilton as he tries to go around the outside of the Mercedes. And the Mercedes sticks to 3rd place. George Russell has indeed got that jump on Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll with another really poor start. Fernando Alonso, though, looking at Lewis Hamilton, goes up the inside and into turn 4. It's going to be Fernando Alonso, and he's there. He's ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Russell then now in 5th place. Sergio Perez in 6th. Stroll losing a couple of positions again off the start into 7th place. Gasly gets the jump on his teammate. And Yuki Tsunoda, though, making that move and gets the position back. Tsunoda up into 9th place. Gasly ahead now in 10th. Ocon into 11th. Carlos Sainz all over the back of Lance Stroll. And Gasly and Tsunoda swapping positions side by side through this middle sector. And Gasly trying to go around the outside of Tsunoda. Does indeed. Tsunoda, though, up the inside. And these two wheel to wheel. The ex-teammates, of course, at AlphaTauri. Oh, and Tsunoda loses it. got out of position there and opens the door to Esteban Ocon. So Tsunoda unfortunately dropping down to 11th place. But right behind Tsunoda, Nico Hülkenberg, out of nowhere, has jumped in front of the Alfa Romeos and is going to go at the Alfa Tauri. Not this time. Lance Stroll under pressure as well from Carlos Sainz. Sainz not able to do it this time around, though. And we have Max Verstappen leading from Lando Norris. Fernando Alonso in third. Hamilton and Russell behind in the two Mercedes. Sergio Perez in 6th place. Lance Stroll and Carlos Sainz still in 7th and 8th that way around, even though Carlos Sainz putting pressure on the Aston Martin continually. And then both of the Alpines up into the points after that little mistake from Yuki Tsunoda as he was going around turn 12 and 13. But here we are then. Lando Norris within DRS range of Max Verstappen. DRS still yet to have been enabled. Alonso showing levels. Verstappen now leading the race by 1.1 seconds, moving himself out of that DRS range from Lando Norris. Fernando Alonso in 3rd place, couple of seconds behind. Obviously, with that battle, lost a little bit of time. Valtteri Bottas having a little look at Nico Hülkenberg and backs out of it. Piastri and Ricciardo having a little battle between themselves at the back of the pack. DRS, of course, now enabled. Rear wing wide open. George Russell saying, let's work together. And he's not going to attack Lewis Hamilton in these early laps. But Lewis Hamilton outside of DRS range, unfortunately, to Fernando Alonso. So at this point, George Russell closing in on his teammate, but Hamilton without DRS. Could be interesting to see how that goes. Paul from Lewis, just half-hearted, covered up the inside. Yeah, it was a little bit strange from Lewis because obviously he's attacking Lando Norris into turn 1, has a little bit of a lockup, and it does make you wonder if he just didn't quite have the speed carrying through because he just gets all out of shape in turn 1, Hamilton. Actually gets back onto the racing line though for turn 2 and turn 3, but Fernando Alonso has that really solid slipstream. Hamilton moves left. Yeah, it's not a great defensive positioning from Lewis Hamilton there, but I'm not sure he can do too much with Fernando Alonso just carrying so much more speed through that first few corners. It is just the fact that Hamilton went for the overtake on Lando Norris, ended up costing him down to turn 4 instead. And Lando Norris now chasing Max Verstappen down. Closing in with the DRS as well now, Lando Norris. This could be an interesting battle between the two if Lando Norris can keep himself within contention. Max is half a second faster than Norris. No contest. The win inevitable. Still within DRS range now, Lando Norris. Fastest lap of the Grand Prix with Lando Norris as well. Of course, just doesn't want to burn through these soft compound tyres though. Does Lando. That's the other thing. He's in the dirty air of Max Verstappen, where Verstappen being at the front of the Grand Prix can have that clean air all the way in front of him. Lando Norris, though, having a little look at turn 1, gets a tyre up alongside the Red Bull, and Max Verstappen will be looking in his wing mirrors for what feels like the first time this season. More DRS down towards turn 4, of course. Is it there, then, for the McLaren? Wheel to wheel with Verstappen, and Norris stopped. Come on, Lando. Lando losing out in that middle sector, though, unfortunately. Does just feel like, if we look at the sector timings, Verstappen just has that edge. You can see Lando Norris quickest in the first sector, quickest in the third sector, has the DRS advantage, also has that little bit of a toe. But in that middle sector is where it really starts to make the car squirm. while you're in the dirty air. And actually, yeah, has lost out considerably, Lando Norris, on that last lap. Really went for it last time around, but now over a second behind Verstappen and not looking to close in anytime soon. I paid for Formula 1 with TV, but I can't watch the races. Do I need to buy something else? It depends. If you're in the UK, then you don't get the races on Formula 1 TV. Oof. Yeah, Lando Norris, I think just going for it. Had one chance, one shot, and that was it. 1.6 seconds now off the leader, and actually looking to be closed in by Fernando Alonso, who is now 1.3 seconds off Lando. 2.7 seconds the gap to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton not living with the Aston Martin at this point. Yeah, Taron, you're making a good point. Hamilton just looking slower than expected. George Russell still within DRS of his teammate. And I know George Russell on the radio earlier was like, let's work together. But how long will Russell stay? Here we go. George Russell saying that he's struggling through turn 11 and turn 12. And I don't want to say I called it, but I did just literally say Russell asking now, can he go for that overtake on Lewis Hamilton? Because otherwise he's just going to struggle too much in the dirty air of his teammate holding onto these soft compound tyres, especially as this first stint is now looking so crucial because of the safety car and red flag. You can go that little bit longer on this first stint, but need to hold on to the tyres as much as you possibly can. Lance Stroll also closing into the back of Sergio Perez because there's a little bit of a train now behind Lewis Hamilton. In fact, a big DRS train. Hamilton from Russell, Perez, Stroll, Sainz, and Gasly all within DRS range of one another. Esteban Ocon just a second off of his teammate and could easily get within that DRS train as well, although under pressure from Yuki Tsunoda behind in the AlphaTauri. Oscar Piastri and Daniel Ricciardo just kind of running around by themselves at the back of the pack, having a little battle between the two of them. Ricciardo within 3/10 of the McLaren. But unfortunately, they are a lap down of everyone else, so they're going to have to overtake everybody if they're going to get back into this race. Piastri and Ricciardo, just keeping the two of them entertained. Sergio Perez has a little look at George Russell, and this is the other thing for George Russell, that if he doesn't get past Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez is right there. Daniel Ricciardo going for a move. Oh, and gets it done. Does Daniel Ricciardo down towards turn 1. So Oscar Piastri now running at the back of the pack. Russell struggling with those tyres now. Still within DRS range of Lewis Hamilton. Needs to stay there, though, because Sergio Perez, we know the DRS on that Red Bull is just something different this season. We saw, I know it was a little while ago now, but in Spa in particular, we just saw Sergio Perez walking past the rest of the cars in the field. Lance Stroll still 7th in this DRS train as well. Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly in the points and ahead of his teammate. Really good from Pierre Gasly, considering he could have easily lost out because of that collision happening in front of him, although Esteban Ocon did to an extent lose out because of that collision happening in front of him. George Russell, no DRS for George Russell that time around. Ooh. Wow, so George Russell might be outside of that second now from Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton dropping off the back of... Yeah, no DRS for George Russell or Lewis Hamilton. So both the Mercedes falling outside of DRS of the car in front and are now going to be properly under threat. Valtteri Bottas. An overtake from him? Possibly. Nico Hülkenberg, yeah. Oh, very nice indeed from Valtteri Bottas. Gets the job done very swiftly in, ahead of the Haas before they even get to the first corner. That Alfa Romeo clearly having the better straight line speed advantage where these tyres currently are. Nico Hülkenberg probably struggling already on the softs. They have done 12 laps now. What happened with Ricciardo? So Ricciardo was hit by a bit of debris, or, well, quite a big piece of debris. He was hit by the tyre of... Ooh. Plan A for Fernando Alonso. Plan A, and he agrees as Sergio Perez has a look at George Russell. And not this time, but down towards turn 4, Sergio Perez might have another go. Yeah, Nico Hülkenberg now a sitting duck to the Alfa Romeos. There is the DRS open on George Russell's car this time around, so he's got himself back within a second of Lewis Hamilton, thankfully for him. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo's rear wing got hit by a tyre, which was debris from Kevin Magnussen and Alex Albon coming together at the start, and it broke the rear wing of Daniel Ricciardo's car, so he had to come in to the pits whilst everyone else was still going around under the safety car. Daniel Ricciardo came in to fix that rear wing, and that meant he lost out a lap on everyone else because everyone else did an extra lap under the safety car. Oscar Piastri similar, so Daniel Ricciardo and Oscar Piastri just kind of going around all by themselves. What happened to Albon? Albon came into contact with Nico Hülkenberg and then Kevin Magnussen and wiped out Kevin Magnussen from the race, and Alex Albon was not going to be able to continue either. Logan Sargent. Oh, Sergio Perez on George Russell down to turn 1, and Perez in the Red Bull. Those Red Bull cars able to hold on to the tyres a little bit better than everyone else, seemingly, because Sergio Perez ahead of George Russell, although George Russell with the DRS is going to have a little go. Sergio Perez, though, just with the tyre advantage in particular, on the brakes later and gets down to turn 4, gets ahead of George Russell completely. Next target for Hamilton. And George Russell on the radio. Are we working together or are we doing our own race? Well, your teammates kind of let you down a bit there, George. No DRS for George Russell meant that he was a little bit of a sitting duck to Sergio Perez down towards turn 1. Tried to fight back to turn 4. Didn't have it. Track map, sorry. Sorry. But you can see Verstappen and Norris disappearing up the road a little bit. Well, Verstappen 2.5 seconds now ahead of Lando Norris. Fernando Alonso doing a really good job to keep a couple of seconds behind that pack. This is a much, much better performance from Fernando Alonso, considering where he and that car have been over the last few weekends. And Esteban Ocon comes into the pits then for Alpine. Blinks first. Oh, it's going to read on the thing that they've pitted before. Yeah, Esteban Ocon has not pitted 3 times. It is his first pit stop. But because the cars went through the pit lane twice, they went through the pit lane twice, it's going to register as them going through the pits and therefore as a pit stop. So where it reads 2 for everybody on the pit stops, that is why they all went through the pits twice under the safety car. Let's see then. Lance Stroll is now actually trying to attack George Russell as well. DRS for Stroll and Sainz and Gasly. So all 3 of those looking at the back of George Russell's car. And George Russell really struggling at this minute. Russell on the radio once again. George Russell on the radio being asked to manage his tyres. Turn 11, he's putting a little bit too much through them, and George Russell snaps back, says, look, I need to race at this point. If I'm managing my tyres anymore, especially as we go down towards turn 1. You know, you're looking at turn 11, 12, 13, 14 is just going to cost him position. Here we go then. Russell through turn 11. And then 12 as well. Russell, you just can't really do much about that. Otherwise, he's going to concede to the cars behind. But this stint, therefore, isn't going to work for the Mercedes. And does make you wonder if there's anywhere that Russell could come in a little bit early. Because this tyre just really isn't happening for George Russell right now. It's 13 seconds behind the lead, so we're looking at 33 seconds. No, he'd come out ahead of Ocon. He'd come out ahead of Ocon and have a bit of a gap to Hülkenberg, I guess, at this moment in time, George Russell. It's not the worst place to come out if he were to pit, but then he has to go even longer on those other stints of tyres, which start to be a little bit awkward. Wow, Oscar Piastri actually getting past Nico Hülkenberg. I don't know whether Nico Hülkenberg is carrying damage after that connection at the start. Oh, Yuki Tsunoda loses the AlphaTauri completely, and that's not going to do his tyres any good. Also loses position because Valtteri Bottas was able to sneak up the inside. Just ran really wide, Yuki Tsunoda. And, front left tyre covered in grass as well. Ooh. Sergio Perez closing in. Slipstream and DRS wide open. And Sergio Perez might go for it here. Does go for it here. He felt really far backwards, but it just shows how much quicker that Red Bull car is at this point in the stint. Because that Hamilton tyre is clearly nowhere. Sergio Perez ahead. Hamilton's going to come back at him, obviously, down towards turn 4. But it's going to be the same thing as Perez did with Russell. He's just going to close the door early. And Hamilton is not going to be able to have a look at the back of the Red Bull. Hamilton still, though, through this middle sector. Looking at the back of the Red Bull car. Trying to close in. But not this time from Lewis Hamilton. Sergio Perez then, where are we looking? 8 seconds off Fernando Alonso. But he's got a nice little gap there. 8 seconds. It seems like a terrible, terrible place for him to be. But actually, that now means that he can really scrub this set of tyres. He can properly just use them until they are done and dusted. Because I imagine that the Mercedes are going to be in first. Stroll's going to be in before him. I'm assuming Sergio Perez is going to be able to go longer on these tyres as Lewis Hamilton pits. So that is the confirmation. Since when did they drop 8 seconds from Alonso? Hamilton just, the pace on the Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso really impressive in comparison to the Mercedes. The Mercedes really struggling with their tyres around here. Fernando being asked to lift and coast. Is that true? I mean, he may as well. He's not really battling with Norris or Verstappen, is he? And he's got a very comfortable lead over Sergio Perez at this moment in time. Maybe just being asked to lift and coast a touch. Preserve those tyres a little bit. Ooh, Lando Norris asked to pick up the pace a touch. And Lando Norris says he is. Yeah, I am. I am picking up the pace. 3 seconds off the lead of this Grand Prix as Lando. He knows that this is an opportunity. Again, though, this is the only thing with... People are going to say, oh, Lando Norris has done really well here to get second. And he has. Don't get me wrong. He has. But just... If he'd have done this in Mexico or Qatar, as I said, then Verstappen was out of position. Like, it's all well and good getting into this position here, but Max Verstappen was on pole. So there's nothing you can do more than that. He can't dictate the pace. Whereas in Qatar, in Mexico, had he started from the start, I know that Verstappen got to the front of the grid within the first corner in Mexico, But if Norris was there, sorry, then he maybe wouldn't have been able to get right up to first place on that first corner. Then Norris can dictate the race a little bit. But at this point, Verstappen's just dictating the race. Even if Norris closes in, it'll only be because... Oh. Hamilton, problem with the left front. Not steering in the way that he would want it to. So maybe that's why Hamilton's pace has completely dropped off a cliff. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Now they're both on the medium compound tyre. We'll compare him to his teammate. And Sergio Perez boxing. I suppose he's covering off both the Mercedes cars. So just making sure that that undercut doesn't happen from the two Mercedes cars. But I don't know, a little bit. I felt like Sergio Perez could have gone a little bit longer and maybe... Although, is he going to come out in a nice bit of free air, maybe? Hamilton's there. Russell's there as well. So, Sergio Perez... Oh, is he going to be ahead of Hamilton here? It's going to be right beside him, I think. Yeah, Hamilton right up. And Hamilton ahead of Perez. Wow. Hamilton ahead of Perez and the undercut. Clearly the way to go then. So Perez has now got to get past Lewis Hamilton once more. Frustrating. Oh, Lance Stroll made a move on Carlos Sainz there. So now that we've seen that from Lewis Hamilton, that the undercut is maybe the quicker strategy here. Again, you want to go longer on your stint because you're then having fresher tyres towards the end of the Grand Prix, which will optimize your strategy. But if the undercut is the stronger option in terms of how you want to pit, you want to pit before the driver in front of you. So Hülkenberg comes in. Hülkenberg having a really poor race, unfortunately, for the Haas team. Perez on the radio. Sergio Perez on the radio. And I kind of agree with Checo here. I was a bit confused when he came in. I just figured like he would have had enough pace on that soft compound tyre to go a little bit longer. But no, they covered off and tried to cover the Mercedes cars, and it hasn't worked out here because Sergio Perez now stuck behind Lewis Hamilton once again. And Hamilton going a lot slower than those cars at the front of the pack. So every lap that Sergio Perez spends behind Lewis Hamilton is a lap that he won't be catching up to Fernando Alonso. Lance Stroll into the pits after having overtaken Carlos Sainz also comes into the pits before Carlos Sainz. So Lance Stroll, I assume, will come out in a nice little bit of air. Oh, and Sergio Perez trying to go the long way around in turn one. Unsuccessful this time, but he's going to get a nice run through turn 2 and turn 3. Right underneath the rear wing of Lewis Hamilton. DRS wide open for the Red Bull. Hamilton peels off to the left-hand side of the track. Says to Sergio Perez, if you want to do it, you're going to have to go around the outside, which he does. And Sergio Perez round the outside of the Mercedes car and back ahead of Lewis Hamilton. As I said, needed to dispatch. Oh, Zhou Guanyu retired the car. Wow. Ooh. Possibly an issue with the engine there for Zhou Guanyu, apparently. But Zhou out of the race then. Joins Charles Leclerc, Kevin Magnussen and Alex Albon as the drivers out of this Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo and Oscar Piastri effectively out of the Grand Prix. You know, you don't like to, throw them under the bus like that, but they are a lap down on effectively everyone. So now we realistically have 14 drivers that are left in contention. Again, maybe I shouldn't say that, because Ricciardo and Piastri, maybe there's a world in which there's a safety car or something, they can unlap themselves and then they are back into the fray. But at this moment in time, we have 14 cars still running that could feasibly get into the point scoring positions. Nico Hulkenberg, though, going very slowly. Let's call it 13 cars that could feasibly get into the point scoring positions. George Russell, we are going plan B. Plan B for George Russell. Logan Sargent being told he needs to manage his tyres a little bit through that middle sector. 6, 7, 10. Carlos Sainz trying to clear Esteban Ocon behind before he comes in. Here goes Lance Stroll on George Russell. Ooh. Lance Stroll up into 9th place then. So a little bit fresher tyres on Lance Stroll's car, and just the Aston Martin looking much, much quicker than these Mercedes. And the Works Mercedes car struggling to compete with people who use their engines. Lando Norris up in 2nd place, powered by Mercedes. Fernando Alonso in 3rd place, powered by a Mercedes engine. And now Lance Stroll making mincemeat of the Mercedes cars. Alonso on the radio. It is box for Fernando after 25 laps on these soft compound tyres. Let's have a little look where he's going to come out. He's going to come out between Tsunoda and Perez, but with a nice gap. Perez has been putting in some laps. Perez is definitely on for a podium here, I would say. As much as I am lauding over how quick the Aston Martin is in comparison to the full works Mercedes, Sergio Perez is going to be, well, at least within a distance. I was going to say touching distance. It's not touching distance. It's still 6 or so seconds. Maybe less, actually, as we see him come around turn 3. Yeah, 3 seconds. 4 seconds. 3.5, 4 seconds, Sergio Perez to Alonso. Definitely not insurmountable at this point. When will it end? The pain for Mercedes fans. Yeah, it's just, don't know what it is. Just can't seem to hold on to your tyres here in Brazil. Don't know whether it's a tyre like a degradation thing or a tyre temperature thing. Interesting to hear the perspective of George Russell and Lewis Hamilton after the Grand Prix. Be interesting to hear George Russell's perspective, because obviously he was hoping that his teammate would do him a favour and give him some DRS, and that did not happen. Here is Carlos Sainz in from 3rd position, but not really running in 3rd. It's Carlos Sainz, the sole Ferrari out there. Gasly also follows, and Tsunoda in as well. Ooh! And Carlos Sainz. Ooh. Yuki Tsunoda having to get onto the brakes to try and get out of the way of Carlos Sainz. Sainz will lose out quite a chunk of time. So will Tsunoda. Because of that, they nearly came together in the pit lane, Sainz and Tsunoda. Not sure whether that will go down as an unsafe release or not. It's quite kind of a weird one. But lost both of them some time. Our race leader, Max Verstappen, box. It's annoying for Lando Norris, because Norris is going to have to come in right underneath him. So no undercut or overcut from Lando Norris. They're pitting on the same lap. And McLaren just going to go for having enough pace. Come on, good pit stop here. Pretty decent. So Lando Norris backing himself that maybe on the medium compound tyre he'll be able to catch up to the back of Max Verstappen. Don't know why that's saying soft compound. Lando Norris definitely on the medium from what I saw. Unless I just see yellow from now on. What's this? Replay of Carlos Sainz's pit stop. Ooh. Yeah, he did just have to back off a touch to Carlos Sainz and slot in behind Yuki Tsunoda because obviously Yuki Tsunoda needed to come across. This is time for someone to try and unlap themselves. Unfortunately, it's not Esteban Ocon at this point. Esteban Ocon, a considerable chunk of time away from Max Verstappen, but not quite a lap down at this point. Mick Schumacher there with Toto Wolff. Look at that, though. Lewis Hamilton's rear left tyre. Already, the degradation on that is horrendous. Look at the wear on the rubber on that car. How long has Hamilton been on those tyres? 9 laps. This is not looking good. It's not looking good, Brev. Russell's going to turn a little bit DRS. Not this time from George Russell. I imagine the Mercedes team, they got to let George Russell pass. Hamilton's just, those tyres, man. They're gone, and Russell within DRS range of his teammate quite comfortably. Hamilton, though, stays ahead for this lap. 6th and 7th place. This is for position. Carlos Sainz, little replay of his overtake. Getting nicely up the inside of the Alpine, and Carlos Sainz taking 8th place back from Esteban Ocon. On different strategies, though. Esteban Ocon already having done 14 laps on his medium tyres. Daniel Ricciardo is unlapped for the first time, by the way. He is a minute and 7 seconds down. Oh, no, sorry, he isn't unlapped. He's just a minute and 7 seconds down from Hulkenberg. So, getting there at the back too. Do I have work experience in F1? I wish I did. I worked at the Lotus factory for a little while, but not the Formula One's side of Lotus stuff, just like the actual car manufacturing side of things. Just retire from the session at this point? Yes and no. I think they're just, gambling on a safety car or something. I know what you mean, though. Holding on to your constructors. Not constructors points. What am I trying to say? Holding on to your engine a little bit better for Las Vegas, which is going to be a heavily full throttle circuit. Like, some of the straights at the Las Vegas strip are just ridiculous. Imagine the constructors if Leclerc was still in. Oh, it would be a lot closer. Although Carlos Sainz might be able to catch up to the back of these Mercedes, especially as George Russell and Lewis Hamilton are still squabbling for position at this point. Russell again looking at the back of Lewis Hamilton's car, but not able to get past him into turn 1. But Sainz is closing that gap. Was 3.4, now 2.4 seconds for the Spaniard. And Carlos Sainz on the medium tyre as well, but they are a lot fresher, so I think if he does catch up to the back of the Mercedes, will have the advantage. Pierre Gasly making a move on Logan Sargent for 11th place. And Gasly now staring at the rear wing of Valtteri Bottas, trying to get both Alpines back up into the points. I fear I cannot defend Merck. Yeah, it'd be an interesting one to try and defend this. They are not having a good one at all at this point here. Yeah, Gasly then, as I said, trying to get both of the Alpines back up into the points, and does, but as he does so, Ocon also pits. So we are back to one Alpine in the points, but Bottas holding on to 10th place for now. Gasly looking like he's got some real pace, but a 6-second gap to Carlos Sainz in front. Top 5 disqualified 1-2 Merc. Makes no sense to keep George behind for so long. Yeah. But I think, unfortunately, Lewis has not played the game at this point. Lewis Hamilton just staying behind Lewis Hamilton once again. George Russell and Carlos Sainz closes the gap even more. It's just continuing to get closer and closer. Carlos Sainz behind. Verstappen, Norris, and Alonso still are podium scorers at this point. Brazil always delivers. Brazil delivered at the start, and now it's calmed down considerably. Verstappen, Norris, Alonso are top 3. Sergio Perez in 4th. Closing down, though, Sergio Perez. 1.3 seconds now the gap. Was 4 seconds, remember, after the pit stop from Fernando Alonso. Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll's pace has actually been really good. Sort of comparable to Fernando Alonso's pace from the laps that I've had a little look at. And then Hamilton and Russell 6th and 7th behind. But Carlos Sainz trying to change that. And now is within DRS range of George Russell. And Carlos Sainz is going to have a little look into turn 1. Not quite this time. But right there, the Ferrari. Sainz is going to have a little lunge, I feel like, this time around. Once we get round to the start-finish straight again. Sergio Perez also might have an outside lunge. Sergio Perez was miles back from George Russell when he made his overtake on the Mercedes. Still made it happen. Hamilton on the radio. Starting to struggle with the tyres. I mean, like, the onboards of Lewis Hamilton's car, the left-hand side, the tyre, especially that rear left tyre on Lewis Hamilton's car, looked absolutely battered. And that was like 5 or 6 laps ago. Oh, Russell wide in turn 12. Carlos Sainz is going to smell blood in the Ferrari. Closes in. The DRS wide open. No DRS for George Russell from his teammate once again. And the Ferrari's going to breeze past the Mercedes. And into turn 1 as we hit the halfway mark of this Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz coming to life in his Ferrari car. And now closing in on Lewis Hamilton. 1.1 seconds the gap to the next Mercedes in front. George Russell's going to have DRS, of course, down towards turn 4, but he's not going to get anywhere close to the Spaniard. And Hamilton and George really not playing the team game with one another at Mercedes today. Hamilton costing his teammate a considerable chunk of time, and now costing him another position in this race. Let's see what Hamilton can do then. Is there anything that he can do to stop Carlos Sainz? Remember, Hamilton on 16-lap-old medium tyres and already saying that he's struggling. Carlos Sainz on much fresher 8-lap-old tyres. Verstappen, Norris, Alonso are top 3 still. Gasly and Bottas at the back of the pack in terms of the points. Yuki Tsunoda, though, now closing in on that 10th place and a possible point for the AlphaTauri team. Logan Sargent running in 12th. Nico Hulkenberg 13th now after Esteban Ocon pitted once again. Daniel Ricciardo only a minute off the back of 14th place. And Oscar Piastri in 16th. Running around a little bit by himself, Oscar. He's a couple of seconds off Ricciardo, but hasn't really been able to close in on the AlphaTauri. And again, just showing the pace that Daniel Ricciardo would have had he been in the mix. Yuki Tsunoda, though, down towards turn 4, as I was mentioning, closing in on the points, and will get himself up into the points, Yuki Tsunoda. That is 10th place for the Japanese driver. And that is big for Yuki Tsunoda in getting ahead of Daniel Ricciardo in the championship by a little bit more, but also putting AlphaTauri ahead of Alfa Romeo on points rather than just on countback. Lando Norris, fastest lap of the Grand Prix, is 4.8 seconds off the back of Max Verstappen, so it does feel a little bit pointless from Lando Norris, unless he's about to close in 6 seconds, and we're going to see an absolute ramp from Lando Norris. Fernando Alonso has fallen off the back of those front two by a considerable margin. Did really well in the Aston Martin to kind of keep with them for the first stint, but this second stint on the medium tyres, Alonso struggling. Carlos Sainz picking up the slipstream though. Lewis Hamilton, and Carlos Sainz made that look very comfortable indeed. Sainz up into 6th place in the Ferrari car. And Hamilton and Russell just both falling backwards in the Mercedes. The DRS wide open for Ferrari. Hamilton moves across to the left-hand side. Hamilton keeps doing this, moves across to the left-hand side and says, if you're going to overtake me, you're going to have to go round the outside, and everyone just does. Like, it's not really anything there. Makes you feel worse as the focus of the coverage the entire race has just been Mercedes falling backwards. It's the only real action, I'm afraid. There's not a lot going on towards the top. I was saying, you know, Sergio Perez closing in on Fernando Alonso might happen, but Sergio Perez 1.5 seconds behind Alonso, not seeming to get into that second range. Hello, Rick, mate. On track, big fan. I'm a big fan of on track as well, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you. Big fan of on track as well. Max Verstappen, I've just seen, has snapped back with the fastest lap of his own. Max Verstappen really does, you know, just ruin any kind of joy that we might have. Lando Norris does the fastest lap. Maybe he could do something. Max Verstappen, next lap, fastest lap, all done and dusted. Oof. We are on board with Max Verstappen for what feels like the first time in a long time. Can Alonso challenge Norris at the end stages of the race since Aston's are in the top 5? It looked like Aston Pace to target Lando Norris. Oof. I mean, he's 12 seconds off the back of Lando Norris, and he pitted earlier. So unfortunately, GameStar 70, as much as I would love to see a little battle, no. Unless he's going for an absolutely mad strategy and actually is going to find, you know, 12 seconds worth of pace on the last stint. I am slightly doubtful, though. I feel like Verstappen and Norris kind of edged themselves away from the pack. The Aston Martin of Alonso did well to keep himself at least in kind of visible distance. Like, you could at least see Fernando Alonso from the perspective of Lando Norris. But that is no longer the case. And instead, we're actually looking at Sergio Perez battling for 3rd place and whether or not Fernando Alonso can hold on to it. So Alonso is going to be looking backwards rather than forwards. Lance Stroll doing pretty well in 5th place. Again, he's got himself a nice little margin. I know he fell backwards off of both starts, which will frustrate the Canadian. It's annoying that he wasn't able to start either of the standing starts well. And is in 5th. And then Carlos Sainz in 6th. Is closing in a touch to Lance Stroll, but I don't know how much the Ferrari is really going to have in comparison to Lance Stroll. I suppose Sainz can just take a bit of the factor that he's got at least a few laps in a little clean air in 6th place. Hamilton 7th, Russell 8th. Both Mercedes just completely dropping off pace-wise. And Bottas retired the car as well. Wow. So, Bottas also with some form of engine problem. And it does make you wonder if Charles Leclerc's hydraulics problem was something that we maybe should have had a little think about. Maybe someone in their prediction video said that the Ferraris may struggle if they didn't take engine penalties. Maybe someone did. I won't say who. I'm a huge fan of Max, but this season has just got boring. I think at the same time you can't say to Max, like, make it exciting, you know? At the end of the day, Max Verstappen, his job is to get pole position, which he did, and then his job is to win races, which he's doing. So he's never gonna not do that. He's never gonna do anything for entertainment purposes. He's doing everything that he possibly can to get as many wins on the board as he possibly can, because we don't know when this dominance era is going to end, you know? It's not going to be forever. We're not going to have Max Verstappen at the top of the standings for the rest of his entire career. It doesn't happen for anybody, you know? Even the best of the best drivers, eventually they come to a stopping point. They come to a point where they reach the peak of their performance and the car's performance, and eventually someone reels them in. We saw it with Vettel, and the change meant that the Mercedes cars then became the better cars. And then we saw it with Schumacher and similar when the Renault of Fernando Alonso came into it, and Fernando Alonso won a couple of championships. Seen it with Lewis Hamilton now with the Mercedes being displaced by Max Verstappen. Like these cycles happen. Hoping for Max to have an issue. Max, unfortunately, isn't Ferrari powered. If he had a Ferrari engine in that Red Bull car, ooh-wee, it'd be over. Be done and dusted. Toto Wolff looking on. Probably a little bit annoyed at Lewis Hamilton for not really playing the team game. I can only imagine that the team were on the radio to Lewis Hamilton asking George Russell to be let by. But wow, and Gasly closing in on Russell. Yeah, I didn't even realize, was kind of looking at the top of the timing sheets to wonder if there was anything that was going to happen there. Should have been looking at 8th and 9th place because, wow, Pierre Gasly all over the rear end of George Russell's car. And Gasly's on the fresher tyres, isn't he? Yeah, 7 laps fresher tyres in the Alpine. We know that the problem here is that the Alpine doesn't have exceptional straight line speed. As I say that, he makes it look easy. Wow. Gets into the braking zone before George Russell and disappears off into the distance. Russell surely will have a go back at Gasly towards turn 4. DRS open for George Russell. But not this time. And that is George Russell dropping down to 9th place on pace. I think the only thing that is playing into Mercedes' hands is they will still get points because Logan Sargent is in 11th place. That's about it. Although Esteban Ocon is there, isn't he? Where's Esteban Ocon? 3.5 seconds off Sargent. Oh no, Sargent's 11 seconds off Sonoda. Surely the Alpine of Esteban Ocon can't close in. What would it be? Like Nearly 13 seconds above, nearly 15 seconds to George Russell. Hamilton is now going to lose points to Sergio Perez. I think that was guaranteed from the start. Or at least from about 5 laps in, when we saw the real pace of the Mercedes car compared to the real pace of the Red Bull. Yeah, I think that was unfortunately going to happen this weekend. Alonso on the radio. Alonso on the radio. Use the pace that you've got. Safety car windows are open as well if there are no incidents. So now being asked to kind of use the pace that he's got in those tyres. He is 5 laps later in terms of the pit stops, Fernando Alonso. So he does have the fresher tyres with those mediums. And Sergio Perez isn't like closing it. Well, in fact, Sergio Perez has been dropping backwards, if anything, over the last few laps or so. Obviously, it's not crazy that Sergio Perez would catch up to the back of Fernando Alonso in the final stint, but also Fernando Alonso doing really well to just hold on to these tyres, get them in the nice window. Can we go to the sector timers? Of course we can. Actually, that's a good point. I don't know who's doing what. The problem is everyone's on slightly different strategies at this point. I imagine Norris is going to be at the top of these by a chunk. I know Verstappen's still best in the middle sector. Sainz good in the first sector, although that would probably be from a lap where he did have DRS. Ricciardo also fairly swift. Ooh, Gasly. Possibly a problem with the brakes. Wow, it is. Everyone is falling like flies here. It's crazy. Esteban Ocon getting ahead of Sargent as Sargent pits, but Gasly now having problem with his brakes. Logan Sargent might end up getting his 2nd points finish here by just staying in the race. Wow. Because we've got 5 drivers out, right? Bottas and Joe both with engine penalties. Magnussen and Albon came to collision on the first lap. Charles Leclerc out on the formation lap. So 5 drivers out completely. Oh, Hamilton. Hamilton really struggling on those tyres now. 26 laps done. And Gasly is closing in. We are getting towards the kind of expected pit window. But still, Hamilton would have a long way to go if he pitted now. George Russell is pitting now. I imagine it's going to be another set of medium tyres, right? They're not going to go for 26 laps on a soft. That would be crazy. Might even go for the hard. No, it is the soft. Soft tyres on George Russell's car. Risky business, I would say, from George Russell there, in my opinion. Don't know how Hulk has kept those tyres. Not overly well, to be honest. Like Logan Sargent, the only car behind him, really. Hülkenberg effectively 2nd from last. Got to remember, Daniel Ricciardo and Oscar Piastri a lap down on everybody else. And in fact, the fact that Daniel Ricciardo is now within 40 seconds of Logan Sargent is pretty damning, to be honest. Hamilton on the radio. Use the tyres now. So Hamilton just saying, I don't know if I've got much more left in him anyway. Sergio Perez into the pits early then. Was earlier than the top 3 Sergio Perez on the pit stops. Don't know if he's got too much to be able to get the undercut going, but Hamilton into the pits with the Brazilian helmet that he has got this weekend. The Brazil flag across the top. And Hamilton out. Gasly's into the pits as well. I hope Gasly is not into the pits and stopping. Nope, the Alpine coming out as well. All good, all good. Got that brakes issue, of course. Ooh, Esteban Ocon might be able to do his teammate a favour here. Don't know if he's going to do it, to be honest. But Lewis Hamilton comes out behind Esteban Ocon. And Ocon, as I said, could just hold up the Mercedes a touch. Give Gasly that opportunity to close in on Lewis Hamilton a little bit further. Wow, little argument going on in there. Let's use the tyres now. Might be the funniest team of the entire season. Hamilton's tyres. Again, go back to the onboard. I swear, Lewis Hamilton's rear left tyre was effectively done and dusted after about 10 laps of that stint. So the fact he made it to 26, 27 was very impressive. Sergio Perez gets the move done on Yuki Tsunoda, I imagine. Would be told... Ooh, Fernando. Doing well. Oh, Lewis Hamilton. Oh, move on Esteban Ocon. Ocon into 9th place then. Lewis Hamilton not held up by the... Oh, and Hamilton should have gone to the hard tyre. Hamilton's on the softs as well. Cool, this is going to be tricky. God, you guys are having a little meltdown in the comments. How about this? Best of no worlds. Fernando Alonso, 5th place. 6 seconds to Carlos Sainz. Lovely little gap. Fernando Alonso having a lovely time. Sergio Perez, 3.5 seconds behind, will be the only real threat, but more than enough time to close in. Oh, Pierre Gasly here is the move on Esteban Ocon. I imagine Ocon giving the little move aside, please. Oh, okay. Gasly thanks his teammate. So yeah, it was definitely a shuffle aside, please, Esteban. We are on very different strategies. Ocon already on soft compound tyres that he's been on for a good chunk of laps. What, 20 odd laps? Yeah, 20 laps for Esteban Ocon. 50-50 map and sectors. It's a good idea. Good idea. Could do that. But Gasly, oh, wow. Gasly already, yeah, right underneath Lewis Hamilton's rear wing. Gasly's going to get the job done again, I think. And another Mercedes put to the sword with the Alpine flying. Yep. Move up the inside, down the pit straight on Lewis Hamilton. And again, is way ahead of the Mercedes before they really get into the braking zone. Hamilton's going to have DRS down towards turn 4, but... Oh, is going to maybe have a little... Nope, not this time. Had a little sneaky drift over to the left to Lewis Hamilton, but didn't actually close in on Gasly anywhere near enough. Yeah, Gasly looking really good. The problem is he's now got, what, 15-second gap? 16-second gap to Sergio Perez. Hamilton, yeah, on the radio, just struggling. Saying, you know what, I'm in the DRS of the Alpine. How am I not closing in? We know that the Alpine actually doesn't have the best straight line speed of the cars out there. But the Alpine quick enough today to get past Lewis Hamilton. And actually, Esteban Ocon not, dropping away from Lewis Hamilton ridiculously quickly. 3 seconds the gap. Another 7 seconds between Hamilton and Russell. God, the Mercedes just really nowhere at this point. What's Logan Sargent on? Logan Sargent has slightly fresher tyres than George Russell. It is a 13.9 second gap. Not likely, is it? Not likely. So Hamilton and Russell are probably going to come in 9th and 10th. Ouch. Ouch. Carlos Sainz giving the go-ahead to come into the pits. So Verstappen from Norris, still our top two, by the way. I know that we haven't mentioned them in a very long time because they're going a little bit longer on this stint. Medium tyres for the both of them. They went longer on the first stint, so they can get away with going slightly longer on the second stint. Is this a good rehearsal for Lando Norris to maybe get that position as the second driver in the Red Bull team? Stroll deserves driver of the weekend. Don't know. It's weird because everyone has kind of had mixed results. You'd say Verstappen has been the most consistent, you know, been right up there in every single session. Yeah, I'd probably say Verstappen. But everyone else has had real ups and downs. Like, people who are good in the race have been bad in the sprint. People who are bad in the sprint were good in the race. And it's been very, you know, tricky to kind of judge. Like, you could say the Aston Martin, right? Because they've done really well. But actually, if you judge them on the sprint, they were pretty poor. And they qualified really poorly in the sprint. Although that wasn't Fernando Alonso's fault. It's tricky. Maybe Alonso, driver of the weekend, just to get Aston Martin back to where they should be, especially if they manage to eke out a podium. Although Sergio Perez closing in on Fernando Alonso. But Sergio Perez quicker at this point. Lance Stroll does come in and pit for Aston Martin. He'll be effectively 5th because Yuki Tsunoda, I imagine, won't go to the end on that set of medium tyres that he's on. Danny Rick now within 26 seconds of Nico Hulkenberg. Oh, Hulkenberg having an absolute stinker. Remember Alex Albon as the greatest Formula 1 driver ever? No. Yeah. Not today. Out at turn 1. Oh, it's a slow stop from Aston Martin on Lance Stroll's car. Front right, possibly a little bit slow. Mercedes have legit done an Aston Martin. True. It's true. Only 3 points from the Mercedes this weekend. Yeah, just, again, as Taryn said earlier, if Charles Leclerc was actually in this race and maybe battling, even if Charles Leclerc was, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th, like, maybe whether he'd have been in the podium positions, have to kind of wait and see. But yeah, if Charles Leclerc was in it, drops George Russell out of the points completely, takes those couple of points away from Mercedes, and suddenly Ferrari looking really good in the constructor standings. But not this time. Not this time. Fastest lap for Esteban Ocon, who is on a fresh set of softs. Gets ahead of Logan Sargent. Sargent is going to get points. I mean, if a couple of drivers take each other out, then yeah. And it's not impossible at this point. Carlos Sainz is still running a Ferrari engine, remember? And they don't seem to be working today. All I'm saying is head over to the video I made on Wednesday where I predict what's going to happen. And I said, I think it's going to be a tough weekend for Ferrari because I think they're going to have to take engine penalties. They didn't take an engine penalty, and now look what's happened. Now look what's happened. Look what you've done, Charles. Why is Alpine so quick? Just really found some pace today. They did say that they'd slightly shuffled the setup overnight at Alpine. after they had a pretty mediocre sprint. Are the Mercs going to get lapped? Let's have a little look. Where is Lewis Hamilton 65 seconds down on Max Verstappen. George Russell definitely 73 seconds down. You can see already Max Verstappen coming around turn 4, turn 5, and he can probably see George Russell fairly clearly in front of him. Oh, here's the problem for Fernando, though. Fernando now 35 seconds off. Oh, my God. Just Lando Norris and Max Verstappen in a league of their own as Sergio Perez sets the fastest lap. Oh, and Sergio Perez getting right underneath the rear wing of the Aston Martin then. This, of course, for a podium place. Aston Martin need this, the redemption arc of their season, to take off all of their upgrades and get back into point-scoring positions that they'll be proud about. Sergio Perez needs this to redeem the second half of the season as well. A poor start from him. Oh, Verstappen box. And there's Tsunoda as well. So Tsunoda's going to exit the pits. And I'm wondering how far back from the Mercedes cars he's going to be. Oh no, a little... but then he's on a much fresher set of soft compound tyres. Yuki Tsunoda, don't count him out here. 4 seconds to George Russell. I don't think that's an insurmountable amount of time. Once again, we're looking at Sergio Perez having a go at Fernando Alonso. As I said, both of these cars needing this podium for very different reasons. Yeah, it's very true. The safety car for Lando Norris would be the dream. Would mean, I don't know though, 12 seconds. Even with a safety car, would he have enough time to come in? I suppose he'd close the gap to Max Verstappen and be on the fresher tyres, but I still think Verstappen would have track position even with a safety car stop. I think it's only about, it's still 15 seconds or so, isn't it? A safety car stop around here. As in comparison to the other drivers, that because they lose that amount of time. Perez still keeping Fernando Alonso still keeping Sergio Perez at bay, even though Perez setting fastest laps at this point in the Grand Prix. Esteban Ocon also doing really fast laps in the Alpine, actually. Come on, someone crash into a wall. Imagine if Oscar Piastri just dips it into a wall here. We'll have a Singapore all over again. Crashgate 2.0. Ugh. George Russell retire the car. It's another problem and another issue. Wow. I think it must be, yeah, it's a temperature issue. And the power unit, again, everyone's struggling with their engines. And again, nobody took a power unit penalty here this weekend, did they? It's where we usually see it. We normally see drivers, we normally see it, the majority of the grid take a power unit penalty here because there is the overtaking opportunity, but nobody deciding to do it and not playing into their hands. Bottas and Joe both retired because of engine penalties, and now George Russell, because of engine problems, sorry. Now George Russell also overheating in terms of the engine and dropping back. Thank God I actually can't keep watching this as a Russell fan. What's worse, coming in 11th or just retiring because you weren't good enough? Both not great. The reason they're leaving Oscar Piastri and Daniel Ricciardo out is because everyone else is retiring from the Grand Prix. Lando Norris finally then box for Lando. He's going to come out comfortably ahead of Fernando Alonso, but a good chunk of time behind Verstappen. It's going to be sort of 10, 12 seconds behind Verstappen once he gets back out on track. Soft compound tyres, though, it looks like for Norris is indeed soft compound tyres. Verstappen 3. No, yeah, they're not super fresh in comparison to Verstappen's tyres either. Verstappen setting the fastest lap of the race, actually. Oh, Fernando Alonso under pressure from Sergio Perez. And just about holds Sergio Perez off. Oof. Feels like we've had so few engine penalties this year. That's what I mean. I felt like today was going to be the day, or this weekend was going to be the weekend. As I said, in my predictions, I predicted Ferrari at least to take an engine penalty here. Because of what happened to Charles Leclerc at the beginning of the season. Like, Charles Leclerc was taking engine penalties in Saudi Arabia. So I assumed that would kind of topple a little bit. And they'd end up having to take one at some point towards the end of the season as well. And I figured here would be better than Vegas and Abu Dhabi. Like, you don't really want to take it in the final race of the season, and it's very tricky to overtake in Abu Dhabi. And then you don't really want to take it in Las Vegas because we don't know 100% how easy it's going to be to overtake, and it's a street track. So, yeah, a weird one. A weird one. Verstappen, though, as I said, about, 13 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. 10-second gap to Fernando Alonso. Sergio Perez still closing in on the Aston Martin, but Fernando Alonso doing an excellent job to just position his car in the perfect defensive sections of the track. Just about, yep, into turn 1. Lance Stroll in 5th place, but fairly comfortably. 12 seconds behind Perez, 4 seconds ahead of Sainz. Gasly also now looking pretty quick in 7th place. But you'd say 3 seconds, a little bit too much to catch up to the back of the Ferrari. Hamilton now in 8th place with Tsunoda behind. I thought Tsunoda might have a little battle with George Russell towards the end of this, but George Russell dropping out of the Grand Prix completely means AlphaTauri are handed an extra point guaranteed. And Esteban Ocon up into 10th place as well. Logan Sargent in 11th. And as I said, Logan Sargent might end up with a point here. He just needs someone else to retire. He's not been quick. He's not been good. Neither is Nico Hülkenberg, but he's going to get a 12th place finish as well. That's so weird, isn't it? Logan Sargent and Nico Hülkenberg been by far the slowest drivers. Like, by a long margin. They have been the slowest drivers out there. Sargent and Hülkenberg, and yet they are on the fringe of points if somebody makes a mistake in the top 10. What on earth has happened? Ugh. Perez recharging his battery. Again, just maybe holding on a touch. Shout out Sargent holding on to 11th. That's what I mean, though. He's not quit. He's not good. He's not been good. It's not been like scintillating pace from Logan Sargent. He's miles off it. He's lapped already. But Perez getting to know Alonso's defensive and tyre destroy skills. Yeah, Fernando Alonso. Wily old fox that he is. Can you try New Star GP? What on earth is that? New Star GP? Yes? Maybe? Lando Norris. Wow. 13.8 fastest lap from Lando there, I just saw. Fernando Alonso still keeping Sergio Perez at bay. And unfortunately, folks, I know that we've got 9 laps left to go. But I think that could be all over, apart from Perez versus Alonso. Everything else looks a little too far What's happening to Yuki Tsunoda? I don't know, actually. Yuki Tsunoda was a second quicker than Lewis Hamilton on that final lap. Lewis Hamilton's day might get worse. 9 laps. It needs over a second, though, does Yuki Tsunoda. And he was, like, pretty much exactly a second quicker. Although Hamilton, a 1:15.3 is very slow in comparison to the rest of the top 10. Everyone else sort of in the 1:14s, apart from Esteban Ocon, also in the 1:15s. But Ocon knows that he's basically guaranteed 10th place and can't do anything to go forwards. We're effectively running with 12 cars, though, which is a bit weird. Obviously, Ricciardo and Piastri are there. But because they were a lap down after the red flag, it was always going to need some kind of safety car or something for them to really get back into the Grand Prix. I feel like it was a good shout, though, Taron. Like, we weren't expecting the Aston Martin to be this quick. We felt like they'd overperformed in qualifying because they got out early, which they did. Like, I don't think they'd have qualified that high had they not got out the earliest of the pack when the rain started to fall. But at the same time, they've put in a really, really solid race pace that we maybe weren't expecting. Lance Stroll in particular as well, because, you know, Lance Stroll, not to be mean, but is usually the one you'd think will start to fall backwards a touch. But a 5th place finish, Aston Martin would be more than happy with that from Lance Stroll. And Lance Stroll should be very, very proud of what he's done. Why was Russell out? So overheated his engine, did George Russell. And they decided, rather than trying to possibly slow it down or do something else, they took him out of the Grand Prix. So engine oil, I think, was really high temperatures. There was a red flag. There was indeed 3 laps in. Lando Norris, currently driver of the day. But yeah, for me, well, actually, yeah, Max Verstappen not anywhere near the voting. I feel like if we were voting for driver of the weekend, it has to be Max Verstappen. Driver of the day, I feel like Verstappen has been very, very good. I suppose you could argue that Norris has done very well. Maybe even Alonso. Alonso driver of the day isn't like a ridiculous thing to say, is it? Biggest L this race is poor Charles. Yeah. I mean, not his fault. The hydraulics gone. So is that, oh. Done and dusted, that was. Come on. Sergio Perez still within DRS of the Aston Martin and still not getting past him. The problem, though, is Sergio Perez came in that little bit earlier, didn't he? And he's got just a little bit better tyre deg and keeping Sergio Perez at arm's length, but still in the dirty air. So scrubbing Sergio Perez's tyres constantly as well. So Perez is now just sort of going to get worse and worse and worse at this point. Whereas Alonso keeping that 8 tenths. Sainz in 6th place has sort of turned down a little bit. I feel like cruising. Comfortable 6th place for Carlos Sainz. Pierre Gasly also very impressive in 7th place. Yuki Tsunoda still 10 seconds off Lewis Hamilton. And I think kind of gave up on that dream, Yuki Tsunoda, because there was a couple of laps there where it looked like he might close the gap to Lewis Hamilton, was a second a lap quicker, but then didn't quite do it. Perez's softs are done. Yeah, exactly. Fernando Alonso using that dirty air, getting the temperature of the Red Bull tyres outside of that perfect window. And I imagine just like the thermal deg rather than tyre wear has led to those tyres being outside of their optimal. The problem with Pirelli tyres is as soon as you get them outside of that thermal operating window once, that's it. You kind of cooked them. Like, even if you get them back down to the correct temperature you wanted before, it's too late. The rubber has already gone past that perfect working window. And just feels like that point. Ooh. Update from McLaren. Lando Norris just putting in some fastest laps for fun, I think, by the sounds of things. Knowing that obviously 8 seconds is a ridiculous amount to try and get to any driver, let alone Max Verstappen in a Red Bull. But Lando Norris now. To be fair to Lando, the fact that he is only 8 seconds behind that Red Bull is very, very impressive. You got to remember, Max Verstappen has been in the lead of the Grand Prix from the start. So he's had the better tyre deg, the better clean air the whole time. And Lando Norris has been doing really, really well indeed. Red Bull is nuts. Yeah, it's very, very quick, isn't it? Just, especially, as I said, when you've got that optimal working window for Max Verstappen at the front of the Grand Prix, clear air for the first stint, just meant that he could go a little bit longer on that first stint, a little bit longer on the second stint, and now has pretty much the best tyres out there, right? Daniel Ricciardo has slightly younger tyres than Max Verstappen, but that is all. And Daniel Ricciardo is a lap down. So Verstappen with the nicest tyres at the end of the Grand Prix too. Ooh. Carlos Sainz on the radio. He's in a Ferrari. Did I not say this? He's now having problem with downshifts. 3 laps left to go. Logan Sargent in 11th. Carlos Sainz. Engine issue. Gasly 4.2 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. We'll see, actually. If Gasly can close in like an actual chunk. There's only 3 laps left to go for Carlos Sainz. But even so. Here we go then. And Sergio Perez just held on until the end. Half a second behind. Fernando Alonso. Oh, he's doing really well, actually, Sergio Perez. He's going to go for it. And he is going to go for it up the inside. Sergio Perez down towards turn 1. Gets it there. And Sergio Perez maybe just very patient. And Fernando Alonso does lose that position. Now is Fernando Alonso going to come back at the Red Bull? Weaves across the track. Not this time for Fernando. Well done, Sergio. Sergio, very patient there. Just waited and waited and waited. Will Fernando Alonso have a little run down to him on the final lap of the race? Go on, Fernando. Just for us. Have a little go. Carlos Sainz seems to have fixed that issue, by the way. Gasly still 4.5 seconds off of the Spaniard. Hamilton 7 seconds off that. Tsunoda 8. Ocon 9. No, 14, sorry. Here we go then. Fernando Alonso on board with him. Round the final couple of corners. Oh, it's a little bit out of shape. DRS, of course. No, I think he's just a touch too out of shape there. Is he going to go? No, maybe down towards turn 4, though. Did close the gap a considerable chunk with the DRS there, Fernando Alonso. It's not out of the question. Just felt a little bit unlikely, but actually going through turn 1 behind Sergio Perez might have been the optimal. They're going to go side by side. Fernando Alonso! Oh, he's going to go wheel to wheel! And what a move from the Spaniard. Cuts across the front of Sergio Perez. I thought there was going to be a touch, but both of them leaving just enough space And Fernando Alonso takes that podium back from him. Driver of the day, let's give it to Alonso, shall we? What a move. Verstappen, though, 17 races this season. It is the Dutchman taking the top step of the podium. Lando Norris just behind with the fastest lap as well. Second place once more for Lando. And again, he's the bridesmaid and not the bride. Fernando Alonso and Sergio Perez side by side through the middle sector. Let's see then. Little bit of DRS from Sergio Perez. Can he beat him to the finish line here? DRS wide open. Fernando Alonso around the final corner. It's going to be close. Oh, 500ths of a second. Wow. Fernando Alonso take a bow. What a battle there between the two. Alonso on the podium for the first time since the Netherlands. And Lance Stroll also comes home in 5th. Aston Martin, lovely job from them this weekend. Carlos Sainz in 6th place. Gasly in 7th. Hamilton will come home a distant 8th place. Yuki Tsunoda with a couple of points for the AlphaTauri team. That puts them a chunk ahead of Alfa Romeo. Well, 2 points ahead of Alfa Romeo in the standings now and closes the gap to Williams because Esteban Ocon takes the final point scoring position in the Alpine. Logan Sargent just needed one more driver to drop out. Just one more is all he needed. Nico Hülkenberg in 12th place. And Daniel Ricciardo and Oscar Piastri with a decent drive from the two Australians. They were a lap down the entire time. Oscar Piastri ended up being 2 laps down on Max Verstappen after it all. But Russell, Bottas, Joe, Magnussen, Albon and Leclerc out of this Grand Prix. It was a bloodbath in terms of drivers dropping out of the Grand Prix, whether it was from collisions or reliability issues. But 14 drivers remained, 12 drivers effectively in it, and 10 pick up points. Wow, what a race it was. I thought that was pretty good. I had a little bit in the middle where it kind of dipped down a touch. I think when we knew that Lando Norris wasn't going to be able to really close the gap to Max Verstappen, when we knew that, you know, the Mercedes were just going to fall backwards, we had to watch Lewis Hamilton and George Russell bicker for a moment before it then just came to a close with those two, didn't it? You know, neither of them having any kind of actual pace to talk about. But Hamilton coming away with a few points at least. There we are, though. Verstappen, Norris, and Fernando Alonso are top 3. Is Fernando Alonso here yet? Yes, he is. There he is. I was going to say, where is Fernando Alonso in all of this? I know that Max Verstappen and Lando Norris were ahead, but Jesus, Fernando Alonso still not round. But I think just taking it in, celebrating with the crowd, and Max Verstappen celebrates with the Red Bull team. Thank you guys so much for watching, sticking around even during the red flag. I appreciate that massively. Thank you all for coming along this ride with me. 2 more Grand Prix. I'll be back in a couple of weeks' time live for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I'm also going to be live next weekend for a little bit of a 20,000 sub special. I know that we're now at 21, but I couldn't do the Grand Prix and the 20 sub special. So stick around. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit like, hit subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you next weekend for a little bit of celebration. 2 more races.